Mr. President, I'm sorry. Those were the words Hillary Clinton uttered to President Obama on election night 2016, just moments after conceding to Donald Trump. That is just one of the never-before-heard details included in the new book, Shattered, Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign. And the co-authors of that book, Amie Parnes and John Allen, join me now on the set. Thank you so much. So listen, why Shattered?
Well, we thought that it was appropriate, when we were trying to think up names in the wake of the election, but it was actually a title that we considered if she won. And,
really?
Yeah, and we kind of like the double entendre there, and
right.
And we thought that it worked. It spoke obviously to the people who were feeling shattered after Secretary Clinton lost, and it also, talked about or hinted about the thing that never happened, that she never quite shattered the glass ceiling.
Right.
She intended to shatter that night.
Right, and it was under that glass ceiling in the final hours of her campaign where she conceded, and you guys really sort of give a play-by-play, hour-by-hour description of what those final hours were like, and we talked about what she said to President Obama, but there were like two key conversations with President Obama that you described. Can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So the first conversation she had with President Obama was after it became clear to pretty much everyone that Donald Trump was going to be the winner of the Electoral College.
Even to her? Was it clear to her?
Well, she was stalling. Her excuse for stalling, or her reason for stalling, was that she wasn't ready to give a public concession speech. She wasn't ready to wrap up her campaign that way. But there were still people in her orbit that wanted to make sure that there weren't buckets of votes to be found in Wisconsin or in Pennsylvania or in Michigan. So she's stalling. One of the president's aides calls her campaign manager, Robbie Mook, and says, the president doesn't want this to drag on. We'd like to see her make a concession to Trump sooner rather than later. That didn't work. So President Obama called Secretary Clinton. He said, you need to concede.
Wow.
He wasn't entirely sure that she was going to do that after he talked to her, though I think she made up her mind right about then to do so. President Obama called John Podesta, the campaign chairman, who was riding back from having told everybody that they were going to wait till the morning to say anything, and said, we can't string this along. We've got to protect the continuity of our government and the sanctity of our democracy, and she's got to get out. Meanwhile, she's making the decision after having talked to Obama to call Donald Trump. She calls him, says those words that she never expected to be saying, "Congratulations, Donald." And then after all of that is said and done, Huma Abedin, her close personal aide, approaches her with a phone and says, it's the president. And this is the moment where she realizes she's getting a consolation call. And she just doesn't want to take it. Her aides are surrounding her. They see her visibly kind of recoil from this moment.
Because this means it really is over.
It means it really is over.
Yeah.
She takes the phone. She gets up from the table where they were discussing her concession speech for the next day, walks into a nearby room for some privacy, and as she's walking into the room, the people there heard her say, "Mr. President, I'm sorry."
Wow.
And that was the real end of her dream. It was the end of the Obama legacy. It was the end of the Democratic Party's hopes of winning the presidency. I mean, there were so many things on her shoulders, and you just feel in that moment, and we go step by step in even more detail than that in the book. You really feel in that moment the sort of crushing sense of defeat.
Yeah, the way you're describing it, it's like a gut check, and you write in the book that, you paint this picture of a campaign that it was spirit crushing, that Hillary's top aides were as miserable as mid-level bureaucrats in an agency with no clear plans. What do you mean by that?
There was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of, they wanted to portray it as this joyful, drama-free campaign, the opposite of what happened in 2008, where there was infighting and people jumping on tables and throwing things at each other. They swept it under the rug for this election, but the drama was all kind of boiling under within. From the very top, you had people like John Podesta, the campaign chairman, who was kind of squabbling with Robbie Mook, the campaign manager, and that happened quite frequently. And so we detail this in the book, the tension, very well. I think it's one of the things that we do pretty well. We talk to a lot of people about what was really bubbling up underneath.
Yeah, it's interesting because from the outside you can see the symptoms of what you're describing, but you're sort of unaware of the cause. And what you're describing to me, to use some more medical stuff, but it's like the cause to the illness, right? You also sort of really detail her management style. When you talk about the infighting, I'm wondering if you think that her management style contributed to that infighting, because she sort of set up, according to you guys, sort of separate groups almost, right?
Yeah, there are warring factions
Right.
within her orbit. She wants to hear from a lot of different people. Nobody really has a full view of the campaign apparatus except for her. They're jockeying for attention. They're jockeying for her ear. They're jockeying for power. They're worried about what this campaign will mean for them down the road.
Yeah.
And all of these things sort of contribute to a mess and sort of cross lines of authority. And people with their own agendas, and that became a real problem for this campaign.
Yeah. She says at one point, I'm quoting from your book, "I don't understand what's happening to the country." When she can see that there is a wave of support for Donald Trump when no one expected that to happen, and it's building, and she says, "I don't understand what's happening to the country." I mean, to me, that indicates somebody who really is not in touch at all. But what did you guys think of that?
That was really indicative, I think, of the larger picture, as you said, of her just being completely out of touch.
Yeah.
You know, with the rise of populism was happening, Bernie Sanders was filling, arenas, and large crowds were showing up for him. On the opposite end, you had Donald Trump doing the same kind of thing. And here she was kind of like still trying to figure it out in the middle of the campaign. Couldn't quite get her message right. They struggled with various slogans. None of them quite stuck. And that was a big problem for her.
In the end, though, who does Hillary and her aides, who do they blame for this loss?
Well, one of the things that's been very interesting about the post-election period is that they have largely, before this book, been able to deflect blame by talking about Russian interference and talking about the FBI. And of course, these are contributing factors to this incredible, crazy 2016 election, and we talk about those factors in this book. But what it has allowed them to do is to shift blame away from the candidate herself and away from the top aides on this campaign that weren't able to save it. And what you get from this book, I think, is a lot of different viewpoints on what went wrong that was internal to the campaign. And what the candidate did wrong to set herself up for this huge fall, including the inexplicable private email server she set up and the private talk she gave to banks right before she was going to run for president at the time of rising populism. These are things that hamstrung her campaign from the beginning and made people believe that she was dishonest. She was unable to recover from that, and you wouldn't have Jim Comey at the end coming back to haunt her had she not done the email server in the first place. So we have basically not seen the circular firing squad publicly because they've been able to project and deflect into another direction.
Right, until now.
This book has a lot of it in
Right.
it.
Yeah, there's a whole, I wish I could talk to you guys for a half hour. There's stuff about how Barack Obama felt about how she handled the email scandal, how she felt about the rise of Bernie Sanders and what she felt was happening. John Allen, Amie Parnes, thank you so much. The book is Shattered Inside Hillary Clinton's Doomed Campaign, and it is out today. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys.
Thank
Love
you.
being on CBSN.